My name is Kristen Saint and I'm going to be your host for this evening. We have a few students here today. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies. They are going to inform us on a few things about GMOs. First we have Mallory. She's going to be talking about the disadvantages.
So like Kristen said, I will be discussing the disadvantages of GMOs. These will include the environment, chemicals, and the fact that we don't use labels.
We have Abiola. She's going to inform us on the advantages.
Okay, today I'll be talking on malnutrition, health promotion, and modified resistance to crops.
Louisa will tell us a little bit about the links between diseases and GMOs.
Some of the diseases we found a link to was diabetes, autism, and cancer.
Since we're talking about GMOs, we went out to a local school to see if people actually know what a GMO is. So here's a little clip from our interview. Okay. So our question is, do you know what a GMO is?
A genetically modified something.
No, I have no idea what a GMO is.
Genetically modified?
Our question is, do you know what a GMO is?
No.
Our question is, do you know what a GMO is?
Yes.
What is a GMO?
Do I know what it, like the word?
What is it? Like in your own words.
It's the stuff that they put in food that makes you tired, is it not?
Do you know what a GMO is?
I believe so, kind of. I think it's a chemical of some sort.
We're wondering if you know what a GMO is.
No. I think it has to do with products and organics, but that's all I really know.
Genetically modified organism.
It is a genetically modified food.
So as you can see, a lot of people don't actually know what a GMO is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it before we get started. A GMO is a product that has been modified to have its natural traits or genes of its DNA replaced with more desirable traits from another organism. This process is called transgenic. They're used not only in plants and animal industry, but in pharmaceuticals as well. There are many GMO products that we see and purchase in our local grocery stores without even knowing it. It's nearly impossible to avoid GMOs. Another concern that we should address is, who is Monsanto? Monsanto is a multinational agricultural biotechnology corporation based in the United States. They are the world's leading producer of Roundup, a herbicide with the active ingredients glyphosate. Roundup kills everything except the genetically engineered crops, which they have patented and charge farmers to grow crops which require them to use their pesticide, for which the seeds are now adapted and absorbed. GMOs are still in the early stages of development, and both scientists and consumers are unaware of the benefits and/or the risks they present. Now, back to the report. First, we're going to be talking about a few pros that the GMOs offer, and Abiola is going to tell us a little bit about that. So, can you tell us a few good things?
GMOs come in mass production, which make them a little bit cheaper than the food produced traditionally. So they're kind of like affordable for families, especially the low-income families. GMO foods have more nutrients as a result of combining nutrients such as protein, vitamins, and minerals into a single food source, which help to alleviate malnutrition, especially in developing world.
So, what type of health promotions are there?
With GMOs, we can promote health. For example, lycopene is an antioxidant that can prevent cancer. So we can get this pigment from tomatoes. So with GMOs, this pigment can be genetically modified and incorporated into food products like pineapples, which will make people that don't like to eat tomatoes get the same benefit as those that eat tomatoes. A good example would be corn. So with GMO corn, what I researched about that is that these corn have been modified genetically to take away the gene that attracts bugs and pests to them, such that this, if pests and bugs don't bother these crops, then we don't have to worry about food supply. Another example is allergy. So, like for example, most people are allergic to nuts. So, if we're able to genetically modify this nut such that the component that is causing allergy is removed, then a lot of people will benefit from eating this food.
Now we're going to touch on a few cons, and we're going to talk to Mallory about this. So Mallory, can you tell us a few environmental effects?
Yes, so 2 points I really want to touch base on. The first is diversity, and the second is uncontrolled growth. So with diversity, there's basically a reduced genetic diversity of plants and animals, and this basically means that the DNA becomes more similar between individuals of a species. Now the problem with this is that these plants and animals need diversity in order to create better opportunity to adapt to changing environments. For example, I'm sure everyone's well aware of the potato famine that occurred in the early 1800s in Ireland. So what happened was this one specific type of potato was planted in all the crops in the country, and because of that, when there was this pathogen that came in, destroyed the crop, it wiped out the entire crop, as opposed to if there was different types of crops used, then only a certain amount, a small amount of that would be wiped out. So with regards to the uncontrolled growth, there is a company called Aqua Bounty Technologies where they have engineered these Atlantic salmon to grow twice as fast as if they were in the wild in half the amount of time. And this is just to pertain to market purposes. So the problem with this is if these fish were to escape, one of two things would happen. They would either grow at a faster rate than normal, or they would not be capable of adapting to the wild.
Wow, I didn't know that. I believe you said chemicals and pesticides. Can you just touch on that?
Yes, there is a specific pesticide called Roundup, and it basically prevents the plants from being able to make proteins needed to survive. Roundup is known as a broad spectrum. Because of this, it has multiple purposes. It is great for killing weeds, but on the other hand, it is also a crop killer. While there may be benefits of using Roundup on these crops, the problem is when farmers are using a number of different pesticides along with Roundup. So Roundup alone is fine, but when you put all of these other pesticides in, you are creating a better chance of resistance to these pesticides. This ultimately will create new super weeds that we will eventually not be able to control because we won't have the pesticides needed to prevent them.
And you said something about no labels on foods. I'm just curious. Can you let us know? What's up?
So companies are actually not required to label foods that have been genetically modified, whereas foods that don't contain GMOs are labeled. So it kind of gives the consumer a misconception of what they're buying. Why aren't there labels on these foods? Is there something to hide? So there's a lot of unanswered questions about these genetically modified foods.
Finally, Louisa, with a few disease links, and my first question is, what's the biggest thing you found when linking diseases?
During the last 20 years, there has been an increase on serious illnesses in the US. And during the same period of time, there has been an increase on the use of GMO food crops. So some of these diseases are cancer, autism, and diabetes.
Can you touch on a few of those diseases that you just specified?
Sure. So with cancer, more specifically breast cancer and liver cancer, the thing is that these modified genes from the food get into our bloodstream and eventually become part of our DNA. Mutating our genes and creating all these tumors and mutations in our cells. Okay, with diabetes, what happens is that GMO products change the way our body metabolizes sugars by decreasing or increasing hormone production. By changing the way our body metabolizes sugar, it makes it for our body harder to recognize these compounds, so we don't metabolize it as well. With autism, it's actually something that happens since the fetus is in the uterus. So all the toxins from the food get passed to the fetus through the mother's womb and affects the developing brain. In Japan, where GMOs are widely used, 20 out of 10,000 children are diagnosed with autism. While in Europe, where GMO's regulations are pretty strict, only 5 out of 10,000 kids are diagnosed with the same disease.
we're just going to touch on a few final thoughts and just kind of go around the table and see if anybody has anything interesting to say. So, do we want to start with Mallory?
Sure. So I can see both sides to it. I definitely agree that there is a benefit to using GMOs, like when we're trying to tackle the world hunger issue. But at the same time, I also feel that it's just very unnatural. So I can't wrap my head around why people want to have genetically modified foods.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense to me either. I would have to be the same. Like, it's hard to understand. There's a reason why we have them. It's doing something good. As time progresses, is it going to link to more diseases? We're going to see more diabetes, more hypertension, which we are, and it's concerning, right?
And it's also the lack of research. There's not enough funding, so we don't get to see what the long-term effects are until it's too late.
Yeah. And the fact that we don't want any human to be sort of a model, so we have to do it on animals and things like that. But yeah, so it's another concern. Did you have anything else to add?
Okay, personally, I don't see a problem with the consumption of GMOs because it has not been directly linked to any kind of disease. So there's a potential for it to like improve on the world supply of food, especially in developing countries that they need this food supply. So I think it's going to be a welcome development for such countries,
Right.
which to me is great.
That is true. It does have its pros.
Yeah, but GMOs have been around for like 20 years and has hunger ended? No. So I don't think that's the solution we need. And I see more cons than pros on this.
It's true.
It's always going to be a debate, two sides of the story. People are either going to agree with it or they're going to disagree with it. And that's just the way that
Great. Well, we'll leave it at that and we'll let you decide for yourself. Thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned a lot from these students. They definitely did their work. I'm sure their teacher would be very impressed. I'm Kristen Singh. This is the GMO Report.
Lisa, bye. Do you want me to do that all over again or?
I'm so sorry.
Again?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. This is a video.
She has too much.
What kind of coffee are they giving us?